In the heart of Denmark, a nation where Islam was once a distant concept, far removed from the fabric of daily life, an event unfolded that sent shockwaves across the country. The news that 3 Jewish sisters had embraced Islam was not just a personal transformation. It was a bold statement that challenged deeply rooted traditions, leaving society in disbelief. Julia, the eldest of the 3, stood in the living room of her family's home, her heart pounding as she prepared to share the revelation that had reshaped her life. The atmosphere was tense. Her father sat stiffly in his chair, his expression rigid with authority, while her mother lingered near the kitchen, pretending to be occupied but clearly listening intently. Taking a steadying breath, Julia spoke the words that would change everything. "I have accepted Islam as my faith," she said, her voice unwavering. The declaration struck like a bolt of lightning. Her father's face darkened instantly. He rose to his feet, his towering presence filled with anger and disbelief. "What did you just say?" he demanded, his voice sharp with fury. Julia's hands trembled slightly, but she stood firm. "I believe in one God, Allah. I have embraced Islam because it is the truth I have been searching for." The reaction was swift and brutal. Her father's hand struck her cheek, the sound echoing through the room. "How dare you!" he shouted, his face red with rage. "You have brought disgrace upon this family. How can you turn your back on everything you were raised to believe?" Julia's cheek burned, but she did not waver. "I have not turned away from the truth," she responded. "I have finally found it. Islam has given me peace, something I never had before." Her father's eyes blazed with fury. "If you do not renounce this nonsense, you will lose everything, your inheritance, your place in this family. Do you understand?" Julia met his gaze, her eyes filled with quiet resolve. "I understand. But I will not abandon my faith. My soul is not for sale." A tense silence hung in the air, but before their father could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Sarah, Julia's younger sister, stepped forward, a scarf draped over her head, a modest yet powerful symbol of her conviction. Their father's expression shifted from rage to sheer disbelief. "It won't make a difference," Sarah said, her voice calm yet resolute. "Because I, too, have embraced Islam." The room fell into an even heavier silence. Their father staggered back, as if struck by the weight of her words. "Not you too," he whispered, his voice cracking. "This cannot be happening." Sarah took another step forward, her expression unyielding. "I believe in the same God as Julia, and I will not hide it." His anger reignited. "Both of you have brought shame upon this family." His voice thundered through the house. "You are dead to me. Do you hear me? Dead?" Their father's words cut through the air like a blade. Their mother, who had been silently watching, finally broke down, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this to us?" she sobbed. "We raised you to honor your family and your faith. What has come over you?" Julia's expression softened, but the fire in her conviction did not waver. "Mama, this isn't about dishonor. It's about truth. Islam has opened my heart in a way I never imagined. This isn't a rejection of you. It's the fulfillment of something I didn't even know I needed." Her mother turned away, unable to bear the sight of her daughters. The pain of betrayal weighed too heavily on her heart. But the turmoil did not stay contained within their home. Within days, whispers turned into full-blown rumors, spreading like wildfire through the community. Then, the media caught wind of it. News outlets across Denmark sensationalized the story. 3 Jewish sisters convert to Islam, a nation in shock, blared the headlines. The public reaction was instant and divided. Social media was ablaze with debate. Some hailed the girls as courageous, independent thinkers. Others condemned them as lost, rebellious, or brainwashed. The controversy spiraled beyond their control, drawing in religious scholars, political commentators, and everyday citizens. Julia, Sarah, and their close friend Leah, the third girl who had also embraced Islam, found themselves thrust into a relentless spotlight. The scrutiny was intense, but together they weathered the storm. One evening, as they huddled in Julia's small bedroom, Leah hesitated before voicing the question on her mind. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a trace of uncertainty. Julia met her gaze and shook her head without hesitation. "No. Faith isn't about what people think. It's about what feels true in your heart. And this is my truth." Sarah nodded, though her voice carried the weight of their struggle. "It's not easy," she admitted. "But nothing worth having ever is. We chose this path, and we have to walk it, no matter the cost." Despite the hardships, they found solace in each other, in their faith, and in the quiet strength it gave them. Their bond, once just that of sisters and friends, had deepened into something even more profound, companions in faith, united by conviction. By the end of the week, the media frenzy had begun to die down, but the impact of their decision lingered. In moments of solitude, Julia would sit with her Quran, drawing strength from its verses. Sarah found peace in prayer, feeling a connection she had never known before. Leah immersed herself in studying Islamic teachings, eager to deepen her understanding. Each of them, in their own way, was building a new life, one rooted in faith, despite the challenges that lay ahead. Their public announcement had been only the first step in what would be a long and difficult journey. But as they walked this uncertain path, they did so with unwavering conviction. Yet the storm was far from over. The aftermath of Julia and Sarah's declaration proved devastating. Their father, still consumed by fury, had not made an empty threat. "You are no longer my daughters," he had said, his voice as cold as the Danish winter. But the words were empty now, nothing more than a memory. True to his threat, their father ordered them to leave immediately, severing their ties to the family as if they had never existed. There was no room for farewell, no chance for reconciliation. Julia and Sarah packed in silence, the weight of their decision pressing down on them. Their hands moved mechanically, but the pain was undeniable. Sarah's fingers trembled as she folded her clothes, while Julia's face remained expressionless, masking the quiet grief that consumed them. They weren't afraid, they were mourning. Mourning the family they had lost, the home they had once belonged to. They weren't alone in their exile. Leah, Julia's closest friend, had also embraced Islam. Inspired by the courage of her friends, she chose to stand beside them, walking away from the life she had once known. Together, the three young women stepped into the unknown. Their new reality was harsh. The small apartment they rented was stark and unwelcoming. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal, and the icy Danish winter seeped through the thin windows. Yet, despite the bleakness of their surroundings, they found solace in their faith. That first night, they prayed together, their voices soft yet unwavering. The rhythmic recitation of the Quran filled the empty room, wrapping them in a warmth that no fireplace could provide. But faith alone could not pay for rent or put food on the table. The days that followed tested their resilience in ways they had never imagined. Cut off from financial support, the trio struggled to make ends meet. Julia found work at a small bakery, waking before dawn to knead dough and bake bread. Sarah took on cleaning jobs, scrubbing office floors in silence, while Leah babysat to contribute her share. Even with their efforts, survival was a challenge. There were nights when they had to choose between paying rent and buying food. Hunger became an uninvited guest at their table, but it never shook their resolve. One evening, as they shared a simple meal of bread and soup, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Julia exchanged a wary glance with Sarah before moving to the door. When she opened it, she was met with the sight of a reporter from a local news channel, microphone in hand, eyes gleaming with curiosity. Their story had captured public attention, turning them into the center of a national debate. The media wanted answers. "Why did you convert to Islam?" the reporter asked, her tone laced with skepticism. "Was it because of a Muslim friend? Perhaps a relationship with a Muslim man? Surely, there must have been someone who influenced you." Julia's jaw tightened. The assumption, the veiled accusation, it was all too familiar. Her voice was firm as she answered. "No one influenced us. Our decision to embrace Islam was entirely our own. It came from a place of deep reflection and understanding, not from external pressure or persuasion." The reporter arched an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. The questions would not stop here. The scrutiny would not end tonight. But Julia, Sarah, and Leah knew the truth. And that truth was worth every sacrifice. "Then what led you to this path?" the reporter pressed, her gaze sharp with curiosity. Julia took a deep breath before answering. A few months ago, Denmark was swept up in protests against Muslims. The rhetoric was filled with hatred, and the goal was clear: to push them out, to erase their presence from our country. Her voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on. "I was among the protesters," she admitted. "I believed what I had been taught my whole life, that Muslims were a threat, that their faith was incompatible with ours." Sarah and Leah exchanged knowing glances, the weight of their own past prejudices mirrored in Julia's words. Julia continued, her voice steadying. But as the protests grew louder, so did the response from the Muslim community. They refused to back down, even in the face of hatred. At first, I couldn't understand it. What gave them such strength? Such unshakable belief? The reporter leaned in, intrigued. "And that's when you decided to explore Islam?" she asked. Julia nodded. "Yes. But not for the reasons you might think. I started reading the Quran, not to understand it, but to find flaws in it. I wanted to prove that my prejudices were justified." She paused, exhaling slowly. "But the more I read, the more I realized how wrong I had been. The Quran wasn't just a religious text, it was a guide to life, filled with wisdom and compassion. It spoke to my heart in a way nothing ever had before." Leah, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke, her voice quiet yet firm. "It wasn't an easy journey," she admitted. "We had to confront everything we had been taught, to question the very foundation of our upbringing. But in the end, the truth was undeniable. Islam gave us peace, clarity, and purpose." The reporter's pen hovered over her notepad. She studied them for a moment before asking, "And how did your families react?" The question hung heavy in the air. Julia took a moment, choosing her words carefully. "It's not something that can be summarized easily," she began, her voice tinged with both sorrow and resolve. "But our families, they made their stance clear. And we made ours." The reporter opened her mouth to ask another question, but before she could, Julia's expression softened. Her words slowed, signaling that this was just the beginning of a much deeper story. The camera zoomed in as Julia adjusted her scarf, her face a blend of quiet strength and vulnerability. The reporter leaned forward, sensing that the real heart of Julia's journey was still to come. Taking another deep breath, Julia began again. "I grew up in a Jewish household where religion wasn't just a belief system, it was our identity," she explained. "From a young age, I was taught to see Muslims as a threat. They were portrayed as violent, oppressive, and backward, everything we were not." She paused, her gaze distant, as if reliving those moments. It was drilled into me through stories, sermons, and conversations that surrounded me every day. A shadow crossed her face as she continued. But my rebellion started early. By the time I was a teenager, I had already begun rejecting everything my family tried to instill in me. I threw myself into a life of distractions, parties, superficial relationships, and anything that numbed the emptiness inside me. She hesitated for a moment before revealing more. Drugs became my escape. I thought dressing a certain way would give me power, that attention would fill the void. But instead, it left me feeling hollow. Her voice dropped slightly, but her conviction remained. And that's where my real journey began. The room fell into silence, the weight of her words lingering between them. The interview was far from over. Julia's story had only just begun. Sarah, seated beside Julia, spoke softly. We both lived that way for years. At first, it felt freeing, like we were in control of our own lives. But in reality, it was a trap. The more we chased validation, the emptier we felt. Julia nodded. Then came the protests. Her expression darkened as she recounted the events. Denmark erupted after an incident involving the desecration of something sacred to the Muslim community. Outraged, they took to the streets in protest. And I was furious. How dare they disrupt our lives for their beliefs? Their actions made me miss an important exam, and that anger consumed me. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable as she continued. I joined the counter-protest, determined to silence them. I shouted slogans, waved signs, and felt justified in my hatred. But then, something unexpected happened. As I stood there, screaming insults, I noticed something strange. The Muslims across from me, they didn't respond with the same venom. They didn't fight back. Instead, they stood firm, their determination unshaken. It wasn't defiance, it was conviction. And that unnerved me. The reporter leaned in. Was that the moment you started questioning your beliefs? Julia hesitated before shaking her head. Not quite. It planted a seed, but I wasn't ready to acknowledge it yet. What truly shook me happened a few days later. She took a breath, as if steadying herself. I was sitting in a coffee shop when I overheard two Muslim women talking. One of them, despite everything, said she prayed for those who hated her. She said, hate only harms the one who holds it. I pray that their hearts find peace. The room fell silent as Julia's voice wavered with emotion. I couldn't get her words out of my mind. Who prays for their enemies? What kind of faith inspires that kind of strength? Sarah picked up where Julia left off. That's when we decided to read the Quran. But not because we were searching for truth. At first, it was arrogance. We wanted to confirm our beliefs, to find flaws that would justify our anger. Julia's voice grew steadier. But the more we read, the more those walls started to crumble. The Quran wasn't just a religious text. It was profound, logical, deeply compassionate. It answered questions I didn't even know I had. It didn't challenge me with fear or force. It challenged me with wisdom. She paused, then recited a verse that had struck her deeply. And we have certainly made the Quran easy for remembrance. So is there anyone who will remember? Her voice softened. It felt like it was speaking directly to me. The reporter leaned forward. Can you share a specific moment that changed everything for you? Julia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Asterisk. Yes. One night, I was sitting alone, overwhelmed by everything I had been learning. I asked myself if I had the courage to truly follow my heart. At that moment, I opened the Quran to a random page, and the first verse I saw said, Indeed, those who have believed and whose hearts are assured by the remembrance of Allah, unquestionably, by the remembrance of Allah, hearts are assured. Asterisk, her voice broke slightly. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, like a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had been lifted. Leah, their close friend, added her perspective. For me, it was realizing that Islam wasn't just about belief, it was about action, accountability, and purpose. It gave me clarity and direction. I had never felt that before. The room seemed to hold its breath as the three young women shared their journey. The reporter's pen hovered over her notepad before she asked, "How did your families react when they found out?" Julia's expression darkened. They were devastated. My father felt betrayed. My mother was heartbroken. And my community saw it as a rejection of everything we stood for. But it wasn't about rejecting them. It was about embracing the truth I had found. Sarah reached for Julia's hand, offering silent support. We never wanted to hurt them, she said. But we couldn't ignore what we discovered. Islam wasn't just a religion, it was a lifeline. A source of hope and purpose. Julia exhaled deeply, her voice quieter now. The hardest part was knowing that my decision meant losing the people I loved most. The weight of her words filled the room. Their journey was far from over. I love them more than anything, Julia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I realized that to truly live, I had to be honest with myself. And Islam gave me the courage to do that. The reporter's expression softened, admiration evident in her voice. Your story is remarkable. What would you say to others who might be questioning their own beliefs? Julia offered a faint smile. I'd say this, don't be afraid to question. Don't be afraid to seek the truth, even if it takes you to places you never expected. Faith isn't about following blindly, it's about understanding. She took a breath before continuing. For me, that truth was Islam. For others, it might be different. But what matters most is having the courage to seek. The camera lingered on her as she finished speaking, the atmosphere in the room charged with the weight of her words. But the story was far from over. In Denmark, where the Jewish community lived in close-knit isolation, the idea of a Muslim presence was virtually non-existent. There were no mosques in their town, no Muslim neighbors, and certainly no real interactions with anyone of that faith. Islam had always been a distant concept, something only mentioned in passing, often distorted, misunderstood, or dismissed entirely. No one in their community had ever truly encountered a Muslim, let alone had the opportunity to learn about their beliefs. For Julia, Sarah, and their close friend Leah, the journey to Islam had begun in the most unexpected way, through the internet. In an era where knowledge was just a click away, their curiosity led them down a path they never anticipated. The protests, and the resilience of the Muslim community in the face of hatred, had planted a seed of doubt in their minds. What was it about this faith that gave its followers such strength? Such conviction? At first, their exploration was small. They read articles, watched videos, and researched quietly, still wary of their own growing curiosity. But the more they explored, the more they realized how little they actually knew. They found Islamic books online, downloaded translations of the Quran, and began studying with an open mind. It felt like a window had been opened, Julia recalled, letting in light where there had only been darkness before. At first, they approached it critically, comparing Islamic teachings to what they had been taught in Judaism, searching for contradictions or flaws. But instead of disproving Islam, they found themselves drawn to its message. The Quran's emphasis on unity, compassion, and accountability struck a chord deep within them. It wasn't just a religion, Sarah murmured. It was a complete way of life. One that provided clarity, purpose. One night, as they sat huddled in Julia's room, the truth became undeniable. Do you feel it too? Leah asked hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. That pull. That certainty. Sarah's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. It feels like my heart is finally at peace, she admitted. But it's terrifying. What will our families say? Our community? Can we really do this? Julia exhaled deeply, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and certainty. I don't know what the future holds, she admitted. But I know one thing, I can't go back. Not after this. I believe in Allah. I believe this is the truth. That moment changed everything. The next day, they quietly embraced Islam. No one in their community knew. But their lives were already beginning to shift. They stopped participating in rituals they no longer believed in. They distanced themselves from practices that contradicted their newfound faith. And they began adapting, little by little, to a life guided by Islam. Letting go of old habits, traditions, and even relationships felt like shedding layers of themselves. It was painful, but necessary. The first visible change came in their appearance. Choosing to wear modest clothing and don the hijab was a decision they did not take lightly. It wasn't just about what they wore. It was an outward reflection of the transformation that had taken place inside them. But in their tight-knit community, change did not go unnoticed. The questions began immediately. Why are you dressing like that? Have you joined some kind of cult? Whispers turned into confrontations. And soon, their families had no choice but to confront the truth. When they finally told them, the backlash was immediate and severe. Julia flinched as she recalled the anger in her father's voice. You've been brainwashed, he shouted, his face red with fury. Do you even understand what you're doing? You're throwing away everything we built. Everything we stand for. Her mother's reaction was quieter, but no less devastating. She looked at Julia, tears welling in her eyes, and whispered, How could you do this to us? To our family? Julia's mother's voice trembled with grief, her eyes filled with unshed tears. Don't you see how much pain you're causing? Sarah tried to respond, her voice shaking. Mama, this isn't about rejecting you. It's about embracing what we know to be the truth. We still love you. We're still your daughters. But their words fell on deaf ears. The more they tried to explain, the more their parents saw their faith as a betrayal. No matter how gently they spoke, no matter how desperately they tried to assure them, nothing could mend the fracture that had formed between them. And then, the final blow came. You have a choice. Their father declared, his voice hard as stone. Abandon Islam, or leave this house. The room fell into silence, heavy and suffocating. It was the hardest decision they had ever faced. But deep in their hearts, they already knew the answer. With heavy hearts, they packed their belongings, leaving behind the only home they had ever known. Starting over was a struggle. They moved into a tiny flat on the outskirts of town, pooling their savings to cover rent. The space was bare, the furniture second-hand, and the cold Danish winter seeped through the thin walls. But it was theirs. They found work where they could, juggling part-time jobs to survive. Julia worked at a bakery, Sarah cleaned offices, and Leah took on babysitting jobs. Some nights, they went to bed hungry, but their faith never wavered. Each prayer, each verse of the Quran, reminded them why they had chosen this path. But their departure had not been accepted lightly. Their father, unwilling to let them go, launched a relentless campaign to bring them back, not out of love, but out of a need to restore his pride. He spread rumors about them within the community. He threatened legal action to discredit them. And worst of all, he began showing up at their flat, demanding they return home. Each encounter was more painful than the last. But they stood firm. Their small flat, despite its limitations, had become a refuge, a space where they could live freely and practice their faith without fear. They worked tirelessly, balancing jobs and faith, struggling but surviving. The Quran, their prayers, and their unwavering belief in Allah became their solace in ways they never imagined. Then came the night that changed everything. A bitter winter wind howled outside as they huddled together, reviewing their plans for the next day. The apartment was dimly lit, the heater barely keeping the cold at bay. And then, a loud, forceful banging on the door. The sudden noise sent a shiver down Julia's spine. Sarah's face turned pale. Leah clutched her scarf tightly, her knuckles white. The banging grew louder, more insistent. A familiar voice roared from the other side. "Open the door." Julia's breath caught in her throat. She knew that voice. Her father. She hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. Before she could react, the door burst open with a crash. Their father stormed in, followed by several male relatives. Their expressions were not just angry, they were resolute. A chilling determination filled the room. Julia squared her shoulders, her voice trembling but firm. "What do you think you're doing?" Her father ignored her. "Enough of this nonsense," he thundered. "You've brought shame upon this family. Tonight we end this. You will return to Judaism, or you will regret every moment of your betrayal." The men spread out across the small flat, their presence suffocating. One of them kicked over a chair, another snatched a stack of books, hurling them to the ground. Julia's Quran landed with a thud, its pages fluttering, as if crying out for protection. Sarah instinctively rushed forward, scooping it up, holding it close as though shielding it from harm. A man stepped toward her, his hand outstretched. "Put that down." He barked the command, his hand raised as if to strike. But Sarah didn't flinch. "No," she said firmly, her voice unwavering despite the chaos surrounding them. "I will not let you take this from me. This is the word of Allah, and I believe in it with all my heart." Her defiance only enraged them further. Their anger, once directed at words, now turned physical. Shouts filled the room, insults hurled like daggers. A man grabbed Julia's arm roughly, yanking her back, while another shoved Leah to the ground. Then the violence escalated. Blows rained down on them. They tried to fight back, to shield one another, but they were outnumbered, overpowered. Through the chaos, Julia's voice rose above the commotion. "You can beat us, hurt us, even kill us, but we will not abandon our faith. We believe in one God, and nothing you do can change that." Her words cut through the room like a blade. For a brief moment, everything stilled. The men hesitated, their fury momentarily replaced by something else, doubt, or perhaps, fear. Julia's father stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. "You think your God will save you?" he sneered. "You're nothing but foolish girls chasing lies." Just as he raised his hand to strike her, something incredible happened. A powerful gust of wind rushed through the room. The windows were shut. The air was still. But the wind came nonetheless. Strong. Sudden. Unexplainable. Then, the Quran in Sarah's hands seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Its open pages fluttered, as if alive. The men froze. Their expressions shifted, from rage to bewilderment. One of them staggered back, his lips trembling. "What is this?" he muttered, his voice laced with fear. Another clutched his chest, his face turning pale. Julia's father, his hand still raised, let it drop to his side. His eyes locked onto the Quran, his breath unsteady. Sarah, still holding the holy book, looked up. Her voice was steady, unshaken. "This is the power of Allah." The room held its breath. "You think you can harm us," she continued, "but our faith protects us." No one can stand against the truth. A heavy silence filled the air. The men, who had stormed in with rage and certainty, now looked uncertain, even afraid. Julia's father took a slow step back, his lips parting as if to speak. But no words came. Then, at last, he turned to the others. "Let's go." One by one, they filed out of the flat, their fury replaced by a quiet, uneasy submission. Julia's father was the last to leave. His gaze lingered on them for a moment longer, a mixture of conflict and something unspoken, before he walked out the door. With a soft click, the door shut behind him. For a moment, the sisters and Leah remained frozen, as if afraid to move. Then, the weight of it all came crashing down. They collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down their faces. "Did that really just happen?" Leah whispered, her voice trembling. Sarah clutched the Quran to her chest, her hands shaking. "It wasn't us," she murmured, her voice filled with awe. "It was Allah. He showed them His power. He protected us." In the days that followed, word of the incident spread through the community. Though their families never spoke of it directly, the shift was undeniable. The men who had barged into their flat, the ones who had come with anger, with threats, now avoided them entirely. Even their father, once so determined to force them back, stopped his efforts completely. It was as if he had come to terms with something he couldn't explain. The fear, the resistance, it faded. And in its place? A quiet, unspoken acceptance. Today, Julia, Sarah, and Leah live lives filled with peace and purpose. They have each married Muslim men, men who share their values, who respect their journey, and who support them in ways they never imagined. Their days are filled with prayer, study, and gratitude. Julia and Sarah are working toward memorizing the Quran, their hearts committed to preserving the very words that had once saved them. Leah dedicates her time to community service, helping others find their way, the way she, too, had once struggled to find. And often, in quiet moments, they reflect on that night. The night that changed everything. The miracle that saved them. The moment that reaffirmed their faith. It was a reminder that Allah's power is infinite, and that those who stand firm in their belief will always find His protection. Their journey was not easy, but it was worth every struggle. And as Julia finished telling her story, she offered a prayer. "May Allah guide those who are lost, soften the hearts of those who harbor hatred, and bring light to those who seek the truth. Ameen." Welcome, dear viewers. Today, we bring you valuable insights about Islam from around the world. We hope this information inspires you and enhances your knowledge. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update from our channel. Peru, officially known as the Republic of Peru, is a country in South America, located along the Pacific Ocean. It is well known for its rich cultural and historical heritage, including a diverse religious landscape. Among these religions, Islam has an intriguing presence in Peru, contributing to the country's spiritual and cultural diversity. Experts on Latin American Islam have observed a growing interest in Islam across the region. This growth is not just limited to major cities but has also reached rural and remote areas. Though Muslims in Peru remain a minority, they have made a significant impact in various fields, gaining respect and admiration for their contributions. One of the most visible aspects of Islamic influence in Peru is in architecture. Many stunning buildings incorporate Islamic design elements, reflecting Middle Eastern and Mediterranean styles. Locals often refer to this as the arabesque architectural style, which enhances the beauty of Peru's cities. Islam's history in Peru dates back several centuries. After the fall of Al-Andalus in Spain, many Muslims migrated to Latin America in search of safety and a new home. Over time, the colonial era saw the spread of Christianity, But despite this, Muslims continued to settle in various parts of the continent. During the expansion of plantations and agricultural lands, workers from different parts of the world, including Islamic countries, arrived in Peru. This led to the gradual formation of Muslim communities, which continue to grow and evolve to this day. Peru's constitution guarantees religious freedom for all its citizens, ensuring that people can practice their faith without discrimination. This has allowed Muslims to establish places of worship, including the Bab al-Islam Mosque in Tacna and another mosque in Lima, which serves as a center of worship for approximately 400 Muslims. In recent years, Islam has been gaining more recognition in Peru, particularly in cities like Lima. Many locals are drawn to Islamic teachings because of their emphasis on peace, equality, and social justice. The rise of social media and digital platforms has played a crucial role in spreading Islamic teachings in Peru. Many people learn about Islam through online content, leading to increased curiosity and conversions. The number of people embracing Islam in Peru is steadily rising. Many converts are motivated by heavy checkmark spiritual curiosity, heavy checkmark a quest for meaning in life, heavy checkmark personal interactions with the Muslim community. Mosques in major cities serve as educational centers, offering Quranic studies and guidance for new Muslims. Online platforms have also made Islamic knowledge more accessible, allowing people to explore the faith at their own pace. One of the key reasons Islam is growing in Peru is the warm and welcoming nature of the Muslim community. New converts receive guidance, support, and encouragement, making their transition to Islam easier. New converts to Islam in Peru often feel a strong sense of brotherhood and acceptance within the Muslim community. This bond makes their spiritual journey even more meaningful and solid. The growing number of converts indicates that Islam is increasingly recognized as a religion that promotes positive values and harmony within society. The Muslim community in Peru actively works to build good relationships with the wider society, demonstrating tolerance and universal principles aligned with Islamic teachings. In rural areas, small Muslim villages have emerged, becoming places of interest for both visitors and those seeking a peaceful lifestyle. These villages, often located in picturesque mountainous regions or near scenic landscapes, offer an atmosphere of tranquility and spiritual reflection. Peru's diverse natural beauty, from the Andes Mountains to the Pacific coastline, provides a breathtaking setting for the daily lives of Muslims. In some areas, mosques and Islamic centers are situated in locations with stunning views, lush green valleys, crystal-clear rivers, and towering mountains, creating an ideal environment for worship and contemplation. These Muslim villages are not only peaceful places to live but also welcoming spaces for those interested in learning about Islamic beliefs and culture. Visitors are often warmly received by the local Muslim population, who are eager to share their traditions, hospitality, and faith. This combination of natural beauty and a harmonious community makes these villages a unique and desirable place for both spiritual seekers and those who appreciate cultural diversity. In terms of religious education, Peru's laws allow different religious communities to manage their own schools. Muslim students in non-Islamic institutions are given the opportunity to design religious learning programs in accordance with their beliefs. However, due to a lack of religious guidance in the past, some Muslims had begun to adopt local traditions, raising concerns about maintaining their faith. To address this, Islamic scholars and religious leaders have increased efforts to strengthen religious education and guidance for the Muslim population. A similar perspective can be found in Islamic publications, which emphasize the need for spiritual education, proper religious practices, and community outreach, dawah. Muslim leaders also focus on educating indigenous people and non-Muslims about Islam, aiming to clear misconceptions about the religion. However, challenges remain, with one of the biggest issues being limited financial resources for religious activities. One major social issue that Muslim organizations in Peru are addressing is the problem of abandoned children and orphans. Currently, there are approximately 1,000 Muslims in Peru, making up 0.02% of the country's population. Despite their small numbers, they are actively engaged in spiritual and social welfare programs, often supported by Islamic organizations such as the Asociación Islámica del Perú and Musulmanes Peruanos Naqshbandi Haqqani. These organizations frequently organize religious and social initiatives, fostering good relationships with other faith groups. Additionally, they provide assistance to abandoned children and orphans, some of whom have tragically fallen victim to kidnappings and illegal organ trafficking. To tackle these challenges, Peruvian Muslim organizations have partnered with the Latin American Muslim Unity, LAMU, an umbrella organization based in Fresno, California, USA, that supports Islamic initiatives across the region. The Muslim community in Peru continues to be active in organizing fundraisers for social initiatives, such as building homes for children. These efforts are managed by local Muslims who also conduct various religious activities. LAMU, Latin American Muslim Unity, has been instrumental in supporting these efforts to spread Islamic teachings across Peru. Thanks to their help, the message of Islam has extended to more rural regions, where people have shown a strong interest in religious education, even in the most remote areas, such as the mountains. In the capital city of Lima, Muslims continue to contribute to social welfare, supporting the poor and underserved communities without considering cultural or religious differences. Mosques and Islamic centers in Peru have become vital hubs for these activities, fostering social cohesion and community involvement. Additionally, with the help of the Internet, Islamic outreach in Peru has expanded quickly. Despite the Muslim population being relatively small compared to other South American nations like Brazil, Islam's growth in Peru has been remarkable, setting an example for the region. While the events of September 11th raised some concerns, they did not shake the faith of Muslims in Peru. Despite initial suspicion following those events, there have been no major issues concerning religious practices in the country. Peru has remained a place where people are free to practice their religion without interference, as long as it does not cause unrest. The Peruvian government supports this freedom by allowing schools to implement religious education programs, so Muslim students in non-Muslim institutions can study according to their faith. Moreover, Peru has become a Muslim-friendly destination. For example, the Sinesta Hotel offers halal food and provides services such as sahur and iftar during Ramadan. The hotel even provides arrows in rooms to help guests identify the Qibla direction for prayer. Many other hotels and mosques are also available to assist Muslim visitors. Despite Catholicism being the majority religion, Peru has been a model of religious tolerance, where people can live together in peace and mutual respect. Lima in particular is known as a Muslim-friendly city. It's home to around 5,000 Muslims, many of whom reside in the capital. Visitors to Lima can easily find halal restaurants and mosques. For example, Mescar Mosque on Girón Oxapampa is one such place of worship. Hotel El Olivar, an accredited luxury hotel, caters to Muslim travelers by offering prayer facilities and halal dining options. Lima's blend of modern amenities and natural beauty makes it a welcoming place for Muslims exploring the city or traveling to famous landmarks like Machu Picchu. The area surrounding Lima, such as Miraflores and Barranco, offers charming beaches and parks, making it an ideal destination for relaxation and exploration. Further south lies the desert of Icachincha, known for its sand dunes. Peru, with its stunning landscape and rich culture, is becoming increasingly popular for both ecotourism and adventure tourism. Though Oxapampa in the Peruvian Andes is a small town with a limited Muslim presence, It holds a unique position in Islamic expansion. It is primarily home to converts, who focus on spiritual growth, religious education, and community building. These communities face challenges, such as limited access to mosques or Islamic scholars, but they maintain strong unity and support one another in their religious journey. Many of these converts to Islam were motivated by the faith's emphasis on simplicity, peace, social justice, and a close relationship with God. Their journey to Islam often represents a deep personal transformation, not only in terms of faith but also in how they live their daily lives. Oxapampa is also known for its ecotourism and adventure tourism opportunities. Visitors can explore Anagatsan National Park and engage with local tribes, experiencing their art, customs, and culture. This combination of natural beauty and cultural richness adds to the allure of Peru as a growing hub for both tourism and Islamic spirituality. Oxapampa, a city known for its dairy products, honey, and coffee, is located in Peru's beautiful countryside. The area's coffee is particularly famous, and any visit here would be incomplete without sampling a cup of locally produced coffee. The Oxapampa Valley is also a hub for adventure sports such as hiking, mountain biking, and rock climbing, all set against the stunning natural backdrop. This picturesque area offers both relaxation and excitement, with its friendly locals and laid-back atmosphere creating a perfect environment for connecting with nature. The rapid development of Islam in Peru has led to the establishment of several mosques across the country. For example, the city of Tacna in the southern part of Peru, which borders Chile, is home to a mosque built in 2008. Managed by Muslim migrants from Pakistan, this mosque stands as a testament to the growing Muslim presence in the region. Despite being a minority religion in a predominantly Catholic country, Islam is respected and continues to gain influence. The number of Muslims in Peru has been steadily increasing every year, contributing to the country's growing religious diversity. With a population of around 15,000 Muslims out of a total of 31.9 million people, Islam remains a minority faith in Peru. However, the Peruvian government ensures that all religious communities can practice their beliefs freely, as long as it does not disturb public order or national security. This policy of religious freedom has allowed Muslims to thrive in the country, with their mosques and community centers becoming focal points for both spiritual activities and social services. Peru is known for its welcoming attitude towards Muslims, and the country's constitution guarantees freedom of religion. Even Muslim students studying at non-Islamic schools are allowed to create religious study programs tailored to their needs. This inclusive approach has fostered positive relations between religious communities and has contributed to the growth of Islam in Peru. Islamic education and dawah, preaching, efforts have expanded in Peru, even reaching remote areas and indigenous communities. Muslim organizations actively work to address social issues, such as helping abandoned children and supporting local welfare initiatives. These efforts have helped dispel misconceptions about Islam, showing that the religion is rooted in peace, social justice, and compassion. The tragic events of September 11, 2001, had a profound impact worldwide, including in Peru. While these events initially led to widespread suspicion about Islam, they also sparked curiosity about the faith. As more people learned about Islam's true teachings, interest in converting to the religion grew, particularly in Peru. Despite the challenges, many Peruvians have embraced Islam, drawn to its values of simplicity, peace, and social justice. In conclusion, Peru stands as a model of religious tolerance, where Islam, although a minority religion, continues to grow and develop. The country's commitment to religious freedom has allowed Muslims to flourish, contributing positively to both the spiritual and social fabric of Peruvian society. Islam's increasing presence in Peru is a testament to the country's openness and the positive impact the religion has had on the lives of many Peruvians. After the 9/11 attacks, the Muslim population in America saw a significant increase, with figures approaching 6 million. Among the countries with the largest growth in Islam, Brazil stands out. However, Peru has emerged as a leading example when it comes to religious freedom and tolerance. The Peruvian government allows its citizens to choose the religion they wish to follow, which reflects the strong spirit of religious tolerance in the country. Peru serves as a shining example of how different religions can coexist peacefully. Islam, though a minority religion in Peru, is widely accepted by people of other faiths. The development of Islamic preaching in Peru has been notably rapid, leading to an increasing number of people embracing Islam. Peru's commitment to religious freedom and tolerance makes it one of the best examples of harmonious religious life. While Peru may not have as many mosques as Muslim-majority countries, major cities like Lima are home to mosques that serve as community centers for Muslims. For example, the Bab al-Islam Mosque in Lima and the Muhammad al-Kuwait Mosque in Tacna are important locations for congregational prayers, Friday prayers, and other religious activities. These mosques are central to the growing Muslim communities in Peru, which are expanding as more people are drawn to Islamic teachings, whether through marriage, social interactions, or religious studies. Despite being a minority, the Muslim community in Peru remains active and strong, especially during significant Islamic occasions like Ramadan. During this holy month, many people gather at mosques for prayers, break their fast together, and engage in charity work. The festive spirit of Ramadan is felt in cities with larger Muslim populations, such as Lima, Tacna, and Arequipa. Ramadan is an important and meaningful time for Muslims in Peru, as they fast from dawn until sunset, in accordance with Islamic tradition. Although fasting times in Peru are shorter than in countries further north, due to its proximity to the equator, the dedication to fasting and worship remains strong. In mosques like Bab al-Islam in Lima, Muslims come together to perform terawih prayers after breaking their fast. The sense of community during Ramadan is further strengthened by the sharing of iftar meals, with non-Muslims sometimes joining in to experience the unity of the occasion. During this month, some Peruvians are also inspired to learn more about Islam, and may even choose to convert to the faith. In addition to their religious observance, Muslims in Peru are active in social work during Ramadan. Many engage in charitable acts, such as distributing food to the needy or raising funds for various causes. This sense of community service underscores the importance of Ramadan, not just as a time for personal worship but as an opportunity to help others and promote social good. These activities strengthen the spirit of unity and social consciousness, which are fundamental to the essence of this sacred month. Despite their small numbers, Muslims in Peru observe Ramadan with unwavering commitment and spirituality, transforming it into a time of self-reflection, faith renewal, and fostering stronger bonds with others. Muslims in Peru live peacefully, even though they form a minority in a predominantly Catholic society. They enjoy religious freedom and practice Islam without major obstacles. Their relationships with non-Muslims are generally harmonious, marked by positive interactions and mutual respect. Living side by side with other religious communities, Muslims in Peru go about their daily lives with calm and respect. They actively participate in various aspects of life, including business, education, and social activities, while preserving their Islamic identity. Often, they engage in interfaith dialogue, contribute to the wider community through professional and social initiatives, and continue to build strong, positive relationships. Their lives reflect Islamic values, emphasizing social kindness and harmony. This coexistence demonstrates the high level of tolerance and respect that exists among the Peruvian population, fostering a peaceful environment for all religious groups. Muslims in Peru enjoy a peaceful existence, with the freedom to practice their faith and actively contribute to the broader society. By maintaining their religious traditions and making meaningful contributions, they set an example of harmonious diversity for the entire country. Dear friends of the Islamic faith, may you be blessed by Allah. I hope you found this video informative, and we look forward to seeing you in our next one. On the day when Muslims around the world honored the spirit of sacrifice, one debate brought that very spirit to life in a way no one expected. On the stage of Harvard, a confrontation began that shook the very meaning of what true sacrifice is. He came with arrogance, certain that religion was nothing but fables. But what he encountered was a girl whose faith was stronger than logic. This debate wasn't just a clash of words. It was a door to guidance, slowly beginning to open. The grand hall at Harvard was unusually silent. Not because there were no voices, but because every eye and ear was focused on the two people on stage. On one side, a middle-aged man, dressed in an elegant suit, radiated confidence. He wasn't just a man. He was a well-known philosopher, a self-proclaimed realist, an atheist, a man who believed logic defeated faith. On the other side stood a young woman, no podium, no notes, just a quiet strength in her eyes and a dignified presence in her modest pink attire. She was not here to win applause. She was here to defend something sacred. The moderator spoke. Today's debate will address 10 fundamental questions, all connected to the story of sacrifice that billions of Muslims around the world commemorate every year. Are these merely stories? Or is there something divine beneath them? The atheist took the mic, smirking lightly. Let's start with a question that has always baffled thinkers like me. Muslims around the world celebrate Eid al-Adha, a festival built upon a very questionable story. And that's putting it mildly. He turned toward the girl, voice heavy with sarcasm. Can a rational man, a loving father, truly prepare to kill his own son just because of a dream? Is that your religion's idea of divine logic? The audience stirred. The question hit hard. The girl calmly picked up the mic. She didn't flinch. Her voice was soft, but it echoed. If it were an ordinary dream, she said, then yes, this would be madness. But it wasn't. This was the dream of Ibrahim, a prophet of God. A man who had already stood firm in fire, walked away from a kingdom, and trusted Allah when no one else did. The atheist raised an eyebrow. The girl continued. In Islam, when a prophet sees a dream, it's not just a dream. It's revelation, divine instruction. Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, did not act out of emotional instability. He acted out of divine trust. And his son Ismail, a child of extraordinary faith, accepted that decision with submission. She paused. Have you ever loved someone so much, she asked the atheist directly, that you were ready to give them up, not for pain, but for a greater cause? That is not madness. That's the definition of sacrifice. There was a sudden shift in the atmosphere. Some students nodded. But the atheist didn't hold back. Even so, he countered, let's assume this dream was divine. But tell me this, why would an all-powerful, merciful God demand such a cruel test? Why play with a man's emotions? Why demand a father to prepare for murder? He leaned forward. Why such violent drama just to test someone? This time the girl smiled faintly. Because, she said, faith is not tested in comfort. It's revealed in crisis. She stood up slowly, and the hall quieted more. God didn't need Ibrahim's son. He wanted to show the world what obedience looks like. He wanted to teach generations to come that faith is not just about rituals, it's about submitting to the will of the Creator, even when it breaks your heart. She took a breath. Ibrahim's test wasn't about blood, she said, looking into the eyes of the audience. It was about love. When God asks, Do you love me more than the gift I gave you? Will you return the gift if I ask? That's not cruelty. That's purification. She paused again, this time letting the silence do the work. But here's the beauty, she said softly. When Ibrahim prepared the knife, God replaced the boy with a ram. Not because he changed his mind, but because he never wanted the boy. He wanted the proof of love. And he got it. The room was still. Then came the atheist's cold voice. Fine. But let's talk about something more disturbing. This same prophet, Ibrahim, waited 84 years to have a child. And then he left him and his mother in the middle of a barren desert. Just like that. No explanation. No comfort. No protection. He leaned in again. Is that faith? Or is that cruelty in the name of religion? The audience was gripped now. The girl looked at him. And then to the crowd. Let me ask you something, she said, slowly pacing. If a doctor gives you bitter medicine, do you call it cruelty or cure? If a soldier leaves his family to protect his country, do you call him heartless or brave? She turned. Faith is trusting the one who sees what you cannot. She continued. Ibrahim didn't abandon his family. He entrusted them to God. And what did God do? He didn't leave them alone. From that dry land came Zamzam. From that child came prophets. And from that moment came a legacy that Muslims walk every year during Hajj, in the footsteps of Hagar, Ibrahim, and Ismail. She lowered her voice, emotionally. This isn't cruelty, she whispered. It's divine choreography. Every step was part of a greater plan. The atheist scoffed. A plan that involves leaving a child in a desert? Have you read what happened next? She asked. He didn't reply. Then don't judge the middle of the story, she said, until you've read its end. A moment of pause. Then a boy in the audience clapped. Then more. The atheist looked surprised, but not defeated. Interesting, he said. Let's push this further. Because your story only gets harder to defend. He took a deep breath and fired the next question. Can any sane mother, Hagar, in your case, really sit in a desert, without question, with her infant son? What kind of blind obedience is that? The girl stepped closer to the mic. Her expression changed, firmer now. She didn't sit silently. She questioned. She cried. She ran, not once, but 7 times between 2 hills, searching for water. She looked around the hall. Your mistake is assuming that submission means silence. It doesn't. It means trusting after trying your best. Her words, the girl continued, still echo in our rituals. If Allah commanded this, He will not forsake us. That is not blind faith. That is knowing your Lord won't abandon you. The crowd was listening, not just with ears, but hearts now. She raised her hand gently, as if holding something invisible. She was once a queen, she said. And yet she became a lone mother in a desert. But it was through her, through that trial, that millions now drink from Zamzam, run Safa to Marwa, and remember her courage every Hajj. She looked straight at the atheist. Does your logic ever create such legacy? He didn't answer. The silence in the auditorium was growing deeper. There was no rustling of papers, no beeping phones, no distracted eyes. Even the moderator hadn't said a word in several minutes. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a confrontation between logic and legacy. The atheist shifted in his chair. His tone was less smug now, but sharper, like a man trying harder to hold ground. So now we've got a man willing to kill his son because of a dream, and a woman running back and forth in the desert because she thinks God told her husband to leave her there. But let's step back from the sentimentality, shall we? He leaned forward again, looking directly at the Muslim girl. Let me ask you plainly, if Allah is all-powerful and merciful, then why does He need to test people like this? Why does He choose such cruel and dramatic methods to test faith? Why not just create people good and loyal? Why demand such excruciating displays? He smirked, waiting for her to stumble. But she didn't. Instead, she picked up the mic with both hands slowly. I'll ask you to imagine something, she said. Imagine a world with no pain, no hardship, no trials, and no sacrifices. A world where everyone is handed ease, where no one has to strive, cry, or lose. She paused. Now tell me, where would love be tested in such a world? Where would sincerity survive? Where would growth happen? She walked slowly to the front of the stage. A child learns love not in candy, but in discipline. A soldier earns rank not in sleep, but in struggle. A seed becomes a tree not in comfort, but through pressure, soil, and storms. She turned toward him. If Allah simply created people perfect, with no tests, then we would be robots, not believers. He was about to speak, but she raised her hand slightly, gently. Ibrahim, Hagar, and Ismail, their trials weren't punishments. They were refinements. Fire doesn't destroy gold. It purifies it. She looked directly into the audience now. And what did their sacrifice give us? It gave us traditions, legacy, faith, rituals, and identity. It gave us Eid. And Eid doesn't celebrate blood. It celebrates surrender. It reminds us, what are you willing to give up for the one who gave you everything? Applause brief, but from more than a few. But the atheist wasn't done. He raised a finger. Wait, he said. So you're saying leaving your wife and child in a deadly desert, just to obey God, isn't cruel? He scoffed. This isn't a test. It's abandonment. And your religion glorifies it. A few gasps in the room. The air tensed. But the girl responded with calm clarity. Let me ask you, she said. If a father leaves his family, but before leaving tells his wife, this is not my will. This is the command of the one who never fails us, and the wife replies, if it's from God, then I am safe. Is that abandonment? Or is that mutual trust in divine wisdom? The atheist didn't reply. She continued. This wasn't some random command. It was part of a plan bigger than their lives. From that desert came the city of Mecca. From that test came the well of Zamzam. From that struggle came the Kaaba, built by Ibrahim and Ismail together. She turned to the crowd. Do you see cruelty? I see legacy. Then she walked to the edge of the stage, voice softer now. But you want to talk about pain? Let's talk about a mother. The screen behind her lit up, a single black and white image, the rocky hills of Safa and Marwa. She pointed to it. Hagar didn't just sit and wait. She ran. Back and forth. 7 times. In scorching heat. Alone. Crying. Desperate. Hoping. Praying. She looked around again. She was a woman. A slave once. Alone in a desert. But today, millions follow in her footsteps during Hajj. Men, women, rich, poor, kings, scholars, all retrace her steps. She held up her hand again, as if holding a truth. Because Allah honored her pain. Now her voice had a tremble, not of fear, but conviction. You call it cruelty. But I see a woman who became a symbol of trust in God for all of humanity. That's not a punishment. That's a promotion. More claps. Stronger this time. The atheist exhaled sharply. He wasn't amused. Okay then, he said. If you believe that every drop of pain was purposeful, answer this. He turned fully toward her. If Allah really wanted to give them water, why not just make it appear immediately? Why force a mother to run frantically between hills? Why make her suffer if the water was always meant to come? He folded his arms. She paused. A long pause. And then smiled. Because water was not the only thing he wanted to give, she said. The atheist frowned. He wanted to give us a lesson. She walked slowly as she spoke. If Allah had instantly given water, it would be a miracle, But when he gave it after her struggle, it became a model. She raised a finger. Islam doesn't teach lazy faith. It teaches effort and prayer. That you don't just sit and wait. You run, even when you're desperate. You hope. You sweat. You cry. And only then, Allah's mercy comes. She gestured to the audience. That's what every pilgrim learns when they run Safa and Marwa. That's what every believer feels when they face trials. You do your part, Allah does the rest. The hall was dead silent. She ended with a single sentence. Zamzam didn't just quench thirst. It quenched the doubt of every soul who wonders, does Allah see my pain? There was a hush. Then someone in the back stood up and clapped. Another followed. Then the rest. A standing ovation. The atheist didn't move. But his smirk had vanished. The moderator spoke softly. We'll continue after the break with deeper questions on sacrifice, including the infamous blade that didn't cut, and whether blood ever mattered to God at all. The girl returned to her seat. The atheist picked up a bottle of water, hands slightly tense now. The debate had only begun. When the audience returned from the short break, the tension had shifted. It was no longer a contest between a renowned philosopher and a young woman in hijab. It was something more profound. The people had seen not just answers, but faith in action. Still, the atheist wasn't ready to yield. He tapped the mic, voice steady but laced with sarcasm. Let's get straight to the part of your story that sounds more like a myth than a miracle. He turned toward the girl. Your holy books say that Ibrahim placed the knife on his son's neck, and yet, it didn't cut. Not because he hesitated, not because he changed his mind, but because the knife itself refused. He gave a slow, exaggerated shrug. Tell me, are we to believe that a blade suddenly stopped being sharp? That the laws of physics bent for a sacrifice God never intended to complete? The crowd chuckled, unsure whether to laugh or wait. The girl, however, didn't flinch. She rose, stepped forward, and spoke, not into the mic, but to the people watching her directly. You ask, how can a knife disobey its nature? She paused. Let me ask you, who gave the knife its nature in the first place? The atheist looked momentarily unsure. She continued, her tone unwavering. The one who gave the fire its heat, made it cool for Ibrahim. The one who commands the sun to rise, can command a knife not to cut. That's not suspension of physics. That's submission of creation to its creator. She turned back to the philosopher. Your worldview sees this as myth. Ours sees it as a moment of divine declaration, that Allah doesn't want blood, He wants obedience. The atheist shook his head. That's convenient, he replied. So, when something unbelievable happens, you say it's God. Isn't that just an easy escape from logic? The girl smiled. Logic is not the enemy of belief, it's the gateway to it. You call it unbelievable, yet you believe atoms formed galaxies, and chaos formed consciousness. We simply believe obedience formed mercy. A murmur rippled through the room. She stepped forward again. The knife didn't cut, not because the story needed drama, but because the test had already been passed. Ibrahim had proven he would give up everything for his Lord. And at that moment, Allah replaced the boy with a ram, not because he needed blood, but because he wanted to transform sacrifice into symbol. She raised her voice slightly. That is why we still sacrifice animals today. Not for blood, but to remember that moment when man's will bowed to God's command. The atheist sat forward, arms crossed. So you're telling me, he said, that all these animals Muslims sacrifice on Eid, millions of them, it's not for blood? Not for ritual? Then what's the point? He smirked again. Does your God actually need animal blood to feel worshipped? The girl picked up the Quran resting near her chair and opened it. She read clearly. It is neither their flesh nor their blood that reaches Allah, but it is your piety that reaches Him. Surah Al-Hajj 37. She closed the book. Allah is above need. He is not fed by blood nor impressed by rituals. He asks us to give, not because he benefits, but because we do. She turned to the audience again. The meat goes to the poor. The blood is buried. But the lesson of giving up what you love for a higher cause, that lives on. She pointed to the screen behind her, which now showed images of people distributing meat to refugees, orphans, and flood victims. This, she said, is what Eid really looks like. Claps. Louder this time. The atheist was not done. Fine, he said, sitting upright. Then answer this. If all this is about intention, not blood, then why not cancel the sacrifice altogether? Why not just pray and remember? Why kill at all? The girl didn't hesitate. Because symbolism matters. She walked to center stage. Just like your flag is a piece of cloth, but it makes armies rise. Just like a ring is a circle of metal, but it binds two lives. The act of sacrifice reminds us every year, don't get attached to your possessions. Don't let your desires own you. She held up her hand. Slaughter the ram, not because God needs meat, but to remind yourself to slaughter arrogance, greed, and selfishness. The room fell silent again. But there's more, she said, her voice softening. It's also a moment of connection, with the Prophet Ibrahim, with Ismail, with Hagar. Across centuries, languages, and continents. Eid isn't just an act. It's an echo of the greatest love story, the one where a father, a mother, and a son gave everything for Allah. There was a glint of emotion in her eyes, but her voice was steady. And we, their spiritual children, honor that story every year. Not to glorify pain, but to glorify obedience, trust, and purpose. A few students wiped their eyes. Then the atheist, this time quieter, said, So, if someone today sees a dream and says God told me to sacrifice my son, would you believe them? A sudden hush fell. It was a trap, a loaded question. The girl's answer was calm, measured. No, she said. Because no one after the prophets receives divine instruction through dreams. She turned toward him. That's where you misunderstand Islam. We don't act on just any dream. We act on revelation, preserved and completed in the Quran. What Ibrahim did was under God's direct command. What anyone does today must be under God's written word. The atheist nodded slowly, almost respectfully. Then tell me this. How do you know it really happened? That it wasn't just a tale passed down through tribes? The girl stepped forward. Because the impact is too real. Too detailed. Too consistent. It shaped global rituals, inspired countless lives, and is honored not only by Muslims, but by Jews and Christians alike. She faced him head-on. Stories don't build civilizations. But truth does. Applause erupted, firm and clear. The moderator leaned forward and spoke at last. Next, he said, we move to the deeper heart of sacrifice. Is this just a cultural emotion? Or is there a rational framework behind these rituals? The girl sat down, peaceful but focused. The atheist was silent. The auditorium had transformed. No longer was this just a university debate. It had become a mirror, reflecting not only arguments and counterarguments, but centuries of struggle, stories, sacrifice, and soul. Yet still, the atheist, gray-haired, sharp-minded, wasn't ready to let go. He leaned forward, pressing both palms on the table. Let me now ask something deeper, he said, tone slow and serious. You talk of love and obedience, but let's be honest. He looked around at the audience, then back at the girl. What kind of father leaves his wife and infant in a barren desert with no food, no water, no shade, just because he heard a command in a dream? He pointed toward her. And what kind of wife just sits there without protest? You may romanticize it. But I see emotional abuse, silence, and blind submission. Why didn't she rebel? Why didn't she scream? The room tensed again. A few heads nodded, others waited to see how the girl would respond. She stood slowly. I'll begin by agreeing with you, only partially, she said. Yes, if this was any ordinary man abandoning his wife and son without reason, it would be unforgivable. But this wasn't any man. This was Ibrahim, a prophet, guided directly by Allah. She took a deep breath. And this wasn't silence born of fear. It was silence born of trust. The atheist frowned. Trust? Or brainwashing? The girl stepped forward. You think faith is weakness. We see it as a source of strength. You think she was passive. But in reality, Hagar didn't just sit there. She questioned, she cried, she searched, she ran. She pointed to the screen behind her. It now showed an animated sequence of a woman climbing rocky hills. Have you seen a mother running back and forth 7 times between hills, crying for her child's life? That is not silence. That is strength. That is sacrifice. The girl's voice trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from emotion. And what did she say when she realized Ibrahim was acting on divine command? She paused and quoted softly, If this is from Allah, then He will not forsake us. She wasn't brainwashed. She was brave. Several in the crowd nodded, some even clapped, not loudly, but with understanding. The atheist stood now, pacing. All right. But even if I accept that, you still haven't answered something crucial. He turned to her, eyes sharp. Why does God test people in such harsh, theatrical ways? Why dreams? Why knives? Why deserts? If He's truly loving, couldn't He find gentler ways? The girl smiled faintly. Because the greatness of love is revealed in the depth of the test. She stepped forward again, closer this time. Look around. Every great human story involves sacrifice. Every deep relationship is tested. Parents suffer for their children. Soldiers fight for freedom. Lovers endure separation. It's not cruelty. It's what makes devotion real. She raised her voice slightly. If Allah tested us only with ease, then our faith would be soft. But when He tests with hardship, He allows our hearts to rise beyond comfort, beyond logic, into love. Silence. She turned toward the screen again, now displaying a quote from the Quran. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. Surah Ash-Shar 6. Then she faced the atheist. You call it theatrical. We call it transformational. The philosopher sighed. All right then. Let's get to the so-called climax of your story. He adjusted his glasses. After all the build-up, after all the obedience and pain, why didn't the sacrifice actually happen? Why stop Ibrahim at the last second? Why replace the son with a ram? If God wanted proof of obedience, didn't He already get it? The girl didn't flinch. Exactly, she said. That's the point. She turned toward the audience. Allah didn't want blood. He wanted submission. Once Ibrahim proved he would give everything, Allah gave everything back. She walked slowly to center stage. Ismail was never meant to die. He was meant to be offered. And once offered, Allah replaced the test with a gift, a ram, to complete the ritual without human loss. She looked at the atheist. That moment taught us, sacrifice is not about loss. It's about offering. And when you offer sincerely, Allah protects what you love. A young student near the front whispered, Subhanallah, under her breath. The atheist raised a finger. Fine. Then answer this, what about today? He gestured around. People claim all sorts of dreams. All sorts of commands. Would you accept anyone today saying, I saw a dream, God told me to sacrifice my child? The girl responded instantly. No. Absolutely not. She walked closer to him. That's the difference between a prophet and anyone else. Ibrahim was a messenger. His dreams were revelation. Ours are not. She looked at the crowd. Islam teaches balance and boundaries. After the final prophet, Muhammad peace be upon him, no one receives divine instruction through dreams. We live by revelation, not imagination. There was a pause. Her words had weight. The atheist tilted his head. So all this suffering, all this legacy, it was just for one family? The girl shook her head gently. No. It was for humanity. She opened her hands. Ibrahim's sacrifice wasn't just a personal act. It became a universal reminder, for every nation, every generation. That's why Christians, Jews, and Muslims all honor him. She pointed again to the screen, now displaying an image of pilgrims from different countries, walking together around the Kaaba. This is the global legacy of one man's faith. The moderator leaned in. And with that, he said, we enter the final phase. The most personal, perhaps the most difficult. Does sacrifice make sense in a world ruled by reason? The girl sat back, peaceful once again. The atheist rubbed his forehead slowly. The crowd leaned in, ready for the next question. The air inside the hall had shifted again. Students were no longer whispering. Professors stopped taking notes. Phones stayed in pockets. For the first time since the debate began, the tension wasn't hostile, it was thoughtful. Reflective. The moderator turned toward the audience. We now move into the most relevant phase of our discussion, he said. In a world driven by science and reason, does the story of sacrifice still make sense? Or is it just a relic of ancient emotion? He turned back to the stage. The atheist man stood up. His expression had changed. Less arrogance now, more calculation. He spoke calmly. You've spoken about symbolism, legacy, emotion, he said to the girl. But we live in an age of logic. Scientific progress. Artificial intelligence. In a world like this, do you really expect people to find relevance in a story about slaughter, dreams, and desert obedience? The girl stood slowly. I don't expect them to find relevance, she said. I invite them to rediscover it. She walked forward. You say the world is driven by science. That's true. We send satellites into space. We decode DNA. But let me ask you something. She turned to the audience. If we've solved everything with science, why are depression and anxiety at an all-time high? Why do we have everything and still feel nothing? A quiet silence fell. She continued. Because logic alone cannot fill a human soul. And sacrifice, real, intentional, heartfelt sacrifice, isn't an outdated tradition. It's a reminder of what it means to be human. The atheist smiled slightly. All right, let's talk logic then, he said. You believe a man was ready to kill his son. And that's a story of love? Of faith? I call that dangerous obedience. What if others copy it? Isn't this teaching blind submission over independent thought? The girl nodded. That's an important question. She looked around. But here's what you missed. Abraham didn't act blindly. He didn't rush into it. He was tested step by step. He didn't say, I want to kill my son. He said, I saw in my dream that I must sacrifice you. Tell me what you think. She held up a finger. Even in that moment, he consulted his son. And the son said, do as you are commanded. That is not blind obedience. That is shared faith, grounded in divine trust. The atheist scoffed. But still, isn't the idea of sacrificing an animal every year barbaric? We've moved past such things. Why not just donate money? Why not just do good deeds? Why the blood? She responded without hesitation. Because actions shape hearts. Not just intentions. She walked toward him. We live in a time of digital screens and empty slogans. People say things they don't feel. They tweet sympathy. They hashtag change. But when it comes to real sacrifice, of time, of wealth, of effort, they disappear. She looked at the audience again. Eid reminds us that change requires giving up what you love. That's not barbaric. That's bravery. The atheist was silent for a second, then asked quietly, "So are you saying this entire ritual is for the soul? Not for God?" She smiled. "Yes. It's for us. God is beyond need. But we're not. We need reminders. We need struggle. We need to break our egos once in a while." She stepped to the side of the stage. "Every cut of that knife on Eid is a metaphor. You're not just cutting an animal, you're cutting your arrogance, your greed, your selfishness. You're saying, I can give up what I love, for a greater purpose." The atheist narrowed his eyes. "So it's more psychological than theological?" She paused. "It's both," she said. "It's spiritual psychology. A divine therapy. A message that no matter how modern we get, we should never forget the value of humility, discipline, and inner submission." He raised an eyebrow. "And the meat?" She smiled. "It's distributed to the poor, the neighbors, and the family. It's not just about sacrifice, it's about sharing blessings. What better way to remember that your wealth is not yours alone?" He leaned on the podium. "You Muslims love this story. But do you ever question it?" She looked him in the eye. "Yes. We do. But not with doubt, with depth." The screen behind her changed, this time to a list. A father leaving his family in the desert. A mother running in panic between hills. A knife refusing to cut. A son agreeing to be sacrificed. A ram appearing in place of a child. A family that gave up everything, and were rewarded with everything. She turned back to him. "Each part of this story is like a layer. You don't just read it once. You reflect. And every year you find something new. Something that challenges your ego. Something that purifies your heart." She stepped forward, now standing right in the center of the stage. "You call it ancient. We call it eternal." The atheist tilted his head slightly. "You've made your points well. But let me ask one final thing. If this story is so perfect, why is the world still full of injustice, war, greed? Has it really changed anything?" She took a deep breath. "It changed the ones who live it." She looked at the audience. "Not everyone sacrifices. Not everyone reflects. But those who do, they raise children who know purpose. They build communities that value compassion. They live with a conscience that says, I answer to something higher than myself." She paused. "That alone changes the world." There was silence. Then applause. Not forced. Not polite. But thoughtful. Long resonant. The moderator leaned forward again. "We now move into the final act of this unforgettable debate," he said. "One last round. One last question. And perhaps, one last transformation." The girl sat down, composed. The man quiet. And the room, waiting for the end. The hall was silent again. Not the silence of boredom, the silence of anticipation. The moderator slowly looked up from his notes. "We now enter the final phase," he said. "The audience has heard philosophy, emotion, tradition. But now, it's time to face the story. Head on. Question by question." He turned to the atheist. "You may begin." The man stood slowly. He no longer smirked. No longer mocked. But his tone remained sharp. He faced the girl directly. "Let's not dance around anymore," he said. "You love the story of sacrifice. Let's break it down, one question at a time." He raised his voice. "Question 1. Can any rational human being really walk out to kill his own son, based on a dream?" The girl nodded, calm. "If it were any ordinary man, no. That would be madness. But Abraham was no ordinary man, he was a prophet." She took a step forward. "In Islam, a prophet's dream is not just a dream. It's revelation. direct communication from God. Abraham didn't act on impulse, he acted on divine command. She paused. And even then, he didn't force it. He spoke to his son. And his son agreed. That is not delusion, that is divine submission. The atheist paced slightly. Second question, why would a merciful God test humans in such cruel ways? What kind of love asks for knives and tears? The girl didn't hesitate. Because faith that has never been tested is just a theory. Tests reveal truth. They purify. She glanced at the audience. You saw cruelty. We saw trust. Abraham trusted. Hagar trusted. Ishmael trusted. And because of that, the world received a lesson in devotion that still echoes today. The man pointed a finger. Third, after 84 years of longing for a child, how can a man leave that child in a desert, alone, for days? Isn't that emotional neglect? The girl looked straight at him. He didn't leave the child with nothing. He left him with God. She softened her voice. Abraham didn't abandon his son. He fulfilled a command. He placed his child in the care of the one who never forgets. And what was the result? She turned to the screen behind her. It now displayed a bright stream of water erupting from the earth. Zamzam. That's the result. A spring of mercy in a barren land, flowing till today. The audience was listening with bated breath. The atheist crossed his arms. Fourth, and what about the mother? What kind of woman sits silently while her husband leaves her in a wasteland? The girl stepped forward. She didn't sit silently. Hagar ran. Between two hills. 7 times. Desperate. Crying. Searching. She let that image hang in the air. But when she realized it was a command from God, she said, then He will not abandon us. That's not silence. That's strength. That's faith. She paused. And that running became a ritual. Every pilgrim in Mecca repeats her struggle. Her courage became sacred. The atheist nodded grimly. Fifth, if God wanted to give water, why make her run first? Why the delay? Why the struggle? The girl smiled softly. Because God teaches us through effort. Hagar's running showed that faith doesn't mean sitting idle. You pray, but you also search. You cry, but you also act. She lifted her hands. That's why her story is repeated every year. Because in every hardship God says, run. Try. I am watching. I will respond. The man's face was more serious now. Sixth, what about the moment of sacrifice itself? If the knife didn't cut, was that really a miracle? Or just a dramatized tale? The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. The knife was real. The intention was real. The miracle was in what didn't happen. She looked at the audience. Abraham was ready. Ishmael was ready. That was the test. The knife refusing to cut wasn't failure, it was divine mercy. It was God saying, you have passed. And now, I give your son back. The audience remained still. The atheist leaned closer. Seventh, so, does God really want animal blood? In today's world, do we still believe God desires slaughter? The girl raised her finger. No. And the Quran is clear. It says, neither their flesh nor their blood reaches God, but your piety does. She stepped forward again. Sacrifice is not about blood. It's about humility. It's about sharing. The meat feeds the poor. The act humbles the ego. And the memory strengthens the soul. The man looked slightly moved, but continued. Eighth, if we accept that dream was revelation, what stops people today from saying, I had a dream from God and doing horrific things? The girl was ready. Because prophethood ended with Muhammad. No one after him receives divine dreams. We have scripture now, not dreams. Law, not visions. She raised her hand. Islam protects us from self-delusion. That's why even prophets were bound by principles. And why no one today can claim a dream to override the law. The atheist tapped his notes. Ninth, these all sound like emotional stories. Do you really believe there's logic in all this? Isn't this just heritage dressed up as truth? The girl looked at the crowd. There's emotion, yes. But also logic. She ticked off on her fingers. A man gives what he loves. A woman fights for her child. A son accepts hardship for a higher cause. These aren't just stories. They're lessons. About responsibility. About discipline. About surrendering ego. She smiled. Even today, the world admires people who sacrifice for their principles. This story is the origin of that principle. Finally, the atheist's expression hardened. 10th, in all this, one thing always bothered me. When Hagar asked Abraham why he was leaving, he didn't answer. He just walked away. Isn't that cruelty? Isn't that injustice to a wife? The girl closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with clarity. Yes. Silence hurts. But sometimes silence speaks louder than words. She walked to the edge of the stage. Abraham wasn't silent out of pride. He was silent because he feared if he spoke, he might weaken. He was obeying the hardest command of his life. And when Hagar understood, she accepted. Not because she was weak, but because she believed. She turned to the audience. That silence became a bond of trust. A moment of divine unity. And the reward was eternal. She looked at the atheist, her voice steady. Sacrifice isn't about pain. It's about offering. Trusting. Transforming. You see questions. We see meaning. The atheist didn't reply immediately. He looked down. The moderator stood. And now, one final reflection remains. The final moments of the debate were unlike anything the hall had seen before. The moderator slowly stepped forward. What we've just witnessed, he said, was not simply a debate about faith, but a confrontation between doubt and devotion. He looked at both participants. One final thought remains, not a question this time, but a reflection. The atheist stood, his expression unreadable. The audience silent. Even the girl seemed still, as if sensing something more was about to unfold. He looked at her, but this time, not like an opponent. More like someone searching. I came here, he said, with the intention to challenge you. To dismantle your beliefs with reason. I thought faith was just emotional armor, a story we tell ourselves to feel safe. He paused, then added, but I didn't expect to feel uncomfortable with how calm you stayed. How consistent your answers were. You didn't just defend your faith, you lived it, right here, in front of all of us. The girl didn't speak. She waited. Patient. He exhaled. You know, I used to read the story of Abraham as a child. Not in your Quran, but in the Bible. My father would tell me, this is obedience. I used to ask him, but why would God ask such a thing? He never had an answer. He looked down, voice softer. I suppose that's why I left religion. Questions with no answers. The audience remained silent, hanging on his every word. But today, he said, gesturing toward her, you answered the same questions I once asked, not with avoidance, not with fear, but with meaning. You didn't hide from the knife, you explained its mercy. He smiled faintly. And you didn't make God a tyrant. You made him a teacher. A purifier. A witness. The girl finally spoke softly. You were never fighting me. You were fighting the silence that once failed you. He looked at her stunned. She continued, walking forward. We all have questions. And sometimes we're hurt not by the story, but by how poorly it was once explained. But the truth, the real truth, it has patience. It waits for us. The man stepped closer. You speak of truth like it's alive. She nodded. It is. But only the heart that seeks hears it breathe. There was something in his eyes now, not defeat, but clarity. As if a fog was lifting. He looked out at the audience. I still don't have all the answers, he said. But for the first time in years, I'm not ashamed of asking. He turned back to her. You reminded me that questioning isn't weakness, it's the first step to knowing. She smiled gently. And sometimes, the answer isn't a word, it's a surrender. Silence fell again, but it was sacred now. The moderator stood between them. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, what we saw today was not a winner or a loser. It was the echo of a story told 4,000 years ago, still unfolding in the hearts of men and women today. He turned to the audience. Abraham walked into the desert with a knife and a dream. Today, we walked into a hall with doubts and questions. And maybe we didn't leave with blood or fire, but with light. Applause. First soft, then rising, then thunderous. The girl bowed her head in humility. The man stood quietly, not clapping, just reflecting. As the hall emptied, a student approached him. Sir, he said nervously, does this mean you believe now? The man paused, then looked at the girl, still standing calmly by her seat. He turned back to the student. I don't know yet, he said honestly. But for the first time, I want to. Outside, the sky had turned to dusk. In the hallway, people talked not about who won, but about what they felt, what they remembered, what they questioned, and above all, what they now wanted to discover.